Ninth had some conversation with the emperor concerning religion. I observed that in England there were different opinions about his faith, that some had latterly supposed him to be a Roman Catholic. Eh bien, replied he, credo tudo que c'è, credi la Chiesa. I believe all that the church believes. I used to, continued he, to make the Bishop of Nantes dispute with the Pope frequently in my presence. He wanted to reestablish the monks. My bishop used to tell him that the emperor had no objection to persons being monks in their hearts, but that he objected to allowing any society of them to exist publicly. The Pope wanted me to confess, which I always evaded by saying, Holy Father, Santo Padre, I am too much occupied at present. When I get older, I took a pleasure in conversing with the Pope, who was a good old man, ma testardo, though obstinate. There are so many different religions, continued he, or modifications of them, that it is difficult to know which to choose. If one religion had existed from the beginning of the world, I should think that every person ought to continue in the religion in which he was brought up, in that of his fathers. What are you? A Protestant, I replied. Was your father so? I said yes. Then continue in that belief. In France, continued he, I received Catholics and Protestants alike at my levee. I paid their ministers alike. I gave the Protestants a fine church at Paris, which had formerly belonged to the Jesuits, in order to prevent any religious quarrels in places where there were both Catholic and Protestant churches, and prohibited them from tolling the bells to summon the people to worship in their respective churches unless the ministers of the one and the other made a specific request for permission to do so, and stating that it was at the desire and request of the members of each religion. Permission was then given for a year, and if at the expiration of that year the demand was not renewed by both parties again, I was not continued. By these means I prevented the squabbles which had previously existed, as the Catholic priests found that they could not have their own bells tolled unless the Protestants had a similar privilege. There is a link between animals and the deity. Man, added he, is merely a more perfect animal than the rest. He reasons better, but how do we know the animals have not a language of their own? My opinion is that it is a presumption in us to say no, because we do not understand them. A horse has memory, knowledge, and love. He knows his master from the servants, though the latter are more constantly with him. I had a horse myself who knew me from any other person, and manifested by capering and proudly marching with his head erect. When I was on his back, his knowledge that he bore a person superior to the others by whom he was surrounded. Neither would he allow any other person to mount him except one groom who constantly took care of him. And when rode by him, his motions were far different. And such it seemed to say that he was cautious, he born inferior. When I lost my way, I was accustomed to throw the reins down his neck, and he always discovered it in pieces, where I, with all my observation and boasted superior knowledge, could not. Who can deny the sagacity of dogs? There's a link between all animals. Plants are so many animals which eat and drink, and there are gradations up to man, who is only the most perfect of them all. The same spirit animates them all in a greater or a lesser degree. That governor, added he, has closed up the path which led to the company's garden, where I used to walk sometimes, as it is the only spot sheltered from the vento agro, the bad wind, which I suppose he thought was too great an indulgence. Son certo c'è a qualche cattivo oggetto in vista. I am certain that he has some bad object in view, but I do not give myself any uneasiness about it, as when a man's time has come, he must go. I took the liberty of asking if he was a predestinarian. Sicur, replied Napoleon, as much so as the Turks are. I have always been so. When destiny wills, it must be obeyed. Quando le volo il destino bisogna obbedire. Asked him some questions about Blucher. Blucher said he is a very brave soldier, un bon sabreur, a good swordsman. He is like a bull who shuts his eyes and seeing no danger rushes on. He committed 1,000 faults, and had it not been for circumstances, I could repeatedly have made him the greatest part of his army prisoners. He's stubborn and indefatigable, afraid of nothing, and very much attached to his country, but as a general, he's without talent. I recollect that when I was in Prussia, he dined at my table after he had surrendered, and he was then considered to be an ordinary character. Speaking about the English soldiers, he observed the English soldiers brave, nobody more so, and the officers generally men of honor, but I do not think them yet capable of executing grand maneuvers. I think that if I were at the head of them, I could make them do anything. However, I know them not enough yet to speak decidedly. I had a conversation with Bingham about it, and I thought, though he is a man of a different opinion, I would alter your system. Instead of a lash, I would lead them by the stimulus of honor. I would instill a degree of emulation into their minds. I would promote every deserving soldier, as I did in France. After an action, I assembled the officers and soldiers and asked, who have acquitted themselves best? Quels sont les braves? And promoted such of them as were capable of reading and writing. Those who were not, I ordered to study 5 hours a day until they had learned a sufficiency, and then promoted them. What might not be expected from the English army if every soldier hoped to be made a general if he behaved well. Bingham says, however, that the greatest part of your soldiers are brutes and must be driven by the stick. But surely, continued he, the English soldiers must be possessed of sentiments sufficient to put them at least on a level with the soldiers of other nations. Where the degrading system of the lash is not used, whatever debases man cannot be so serviceable. Bingham says that none but the dregs of the canaille voluntarily enter as soldiers. This disgraceful punishment is the cause of it. I would remove it and make even the situation of a private soldier be considered as conferring honor upon the individual who bore it, as I did in France. I would encourage young men of education, the sons of merchants, gentlemen, and others to enter as private soldiers and promote them according to their merits. I would substitute confinement, bread and water, the contempt of his comrades, le mépris de ses camarades, and such other punishments for the lash. Quando il soldato ha avilito e dishonorado col frustri poco gli premi la gloria a l'onore della sua patria. What honor can a man possibly have who is flogged before his comrades? He loses all feeling and would as soon fight against as for his country if he were better paid by the opposite party. When the Austrians had possession of Italy, they in vain attempted to make soldiers of the Italians. They either deserted as fast as they raised them, or else, when compelled to advance against the enemy, they ran away in the first fire. It was impossible to keep them together, a single regiment. When I got Italy and began to raise soldiers, the Austrians laughed at me and said that it was in vain, that they had been trying for a long time, and that it was not in the nature of the Italians to fight or to make good soldiers. Notwithstanding this, I raised many thousands of Italians who fought with bravery equal to the French and did not desert me, even in my time of adversity. What was the cause? I abolished flogging and the stick, which the Austrians had adopted. I promoted those amongst the soldiers who had talent and made many of them generals. I substitute honor and emulation for terror and the lash.